Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AAS YouTube channel. And this one is going to be on the Unified Astronomy Thesaurus, the UAT. And I'm super happy to have Katie Frey with us today. Hey, Katie.
Hi, Frank.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well on this post-equinox day. It's cooling off a little bit in Phoenix. We're still hitting the over the 100 mark still, but it is cooling off in the mornings. So are you starting to get changes in the colors of the leaves there in the east?
Yeah, a bit, but it's also been rainy and windy. So I think some of the leaves kind of got pulled off the trees and a little early this year, but we still have a lot of leaves, and I think we're still expecting some more fall colors, so that'll be good.
Yep, very cool. And that's a lovely background where that looks like Hat Creek.
It's the same background I had at the last video. Actually, it's Hat Creek Observatory in California. I had the chance to go visit in May of 2019, so over a year ago, and it was a really great experience. And so
why were you visiting there? What was the purpose?
It was a radio frequency hackathon, actually. So this is one of the and so we participated because another project we've been working at the CFA, and I'm at the Wolbach Library at the Center for Astrophysics. It has to do with metadata for satellites, and part of that is describing, the signals that we receive from those satellites. So this group that's interested, they were interested in, trying to figure out how to share radio signals and information about the radio signals amongst themselves and others, and kind of, coming up with a more standardized way of doing that. So they had Dana, the head librarian at Wolbach, and myself come visit to kind of consult and talk with them about metadata and organizing information. So it was a really great opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So speaking of metadata, we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. The title of this one is How Do I Influence the UAT? So for example, you may have concepts that you want to add, concepts that you want to delete, how frequently is the UAT updated, and so on. So we're going to cover a little bit about that today. So I'm going to do a screen share of the UAT. And here we are, the UAT. Katie, say something a little bit about what the UAT is.
So the Unified Astronomy Thesaurus is it's open and community supported essentially a list of keywords, but they're organized in this deep hierarchical structure, and all the concepts are backed by machine readable identifiers. So that way, when you're working with a system like the ADS, it will know how these concepts are related to each other. Is one kind of a more narrower and more specific version of another? Are they related but not studied, but not in the same areas of the UAT? And for example, we have like solar flares and stellar flares. I mean, obviously they're the same thing essentially, but we have solar physicists, solar astronomers, and our stellar astronomers, and they both use different techniques to learn about those flares. So they're connected in the UAT with that relationship, but also separate in their hierarchies. So
cool.
Yeah.
So we see it's open, interoperable, and community supported, and we're going to be covering some of that community supported on how you introduce new concepts or delete new concepts into the UAT. So we're going to start with the menu up here, and contribute is
Yep, that would be where you want to go. If you have a change you'd like to suggest for the Unified Astronomy Thesaurus, the best way is submitting a GitHub issue.
So I'm going to click, and we're going to go over to GitHub. And this is the UAT GitHub site, and the top level here we have open issues, we have closed issues. So let's go ahead and take a look at something, and you can see, so here are the open issues. There's 31 of them. People suggesting new concepts, stellar streams, H2 galaxies, extremely red objects, etc. Let's take a look at one of those.
Just briefly add that it looks like most of them are added by me, but they actually are suggestions that have come to me either by talking to someone in person or via email, and I copy it here. It's also very acceptable and preferred even if if as an astronomer would like to come and make a suggestion on their own. So yeah.
All right, so let's just take a look at one. So this is super Eddington accretion. It's currently not in the UAT, so the suggestion is to add it. And there's who suggested it. And there's a little bit of discussion about it being related to black holes. And so if you would like to make a contribution to this topic, you're welcome to do so. Or you can send an email to Katie, and it can be added in. But it's just as easy to go to the site and add in your own comments by yourself. So I would add one here right now, and I would say that the term super Eddington is larger than just black holes. It's used for examples in stars. You can have a super Eddington luminosity, you can have a super Eddington mass. And so I think it's larger than black holes, and I think it's larger than just accretion. That would be my contribution to this one. So if you were going to edit, I would just add the concept super Eddington, then super Eddington what, and what it's applied to for different topics.
Okay, so that's really valuable feedback to hear. And I'm interested to know, where in the UAT do you think super Eddington should live? Where is it appropriate? Seems like it's related to gravity, maybe, or not exactly.
Well, it's related to gravity, yes. It does have a G in there. Yeah, and it's certainly beyond. It's not just Newtonian gravity as well. The concept still applies in general relativity or otherwise. So I'd have to think a little bit about that. But I guess what its parent topic would be, or parent topics would be. So yeah. So
yeah, as something that I had mentioned earlier, the UAT does have a deep hierarchy. So I'd like to know what concepts should be added, but it's also really valuable to understand what other concepts are similar to it or related to it, where it might live within the structure of the UAT. And that's sort of like part of the back and forth that I like to have with astronomers when I'm talking about asking about UAT concepts. And so this one, obviously, I need more information. So I got some good information from you just now. So I'll definitely add that into the comments later. And you did big.
So that's an example of an open concept. So you can get in there and add your concepts on engineering or delayed Doppler imaging or ones that are existing. So let's take a look at some of the ones that have been closed. So there's 31 open and there's 151 of them that have been closed. And they have been resolved one way or the other, right? Add them, not add them. Okay.
Yeah, or we'll make the change that was suggested, or we won't, or usually, depending on the complexity of the change or the number of concepts suggested, we'll end up doing some of the suggestions, but not all of them, and kind of, working to a good compromise. And something that may not be very obvious is that, again, there's all these relationships between concepts in the UAT, and so if you make a change somewhere, it might have an effect somewhere else that isn't apparent to the person making the suggestion.
Fair enough.
And so in that case, like that's part of what I do is I evaluate the suggestion, the information that's being given to me, and I try to see what does it affect right there, where the suggestion is being made, and how does it affect the UAT as a whole? Does that bring any questions to mind that I need to get resolved?
So let's take a look at one that was closed. So this would be OVV quasar. And for those who are not used to that definition, that would be an optically violent variable quasar. Optically variable violent quasar. And so here it was suggested on October 28th of 2019. Looks like you record some of the definitions from Wikipedia, Astrophysics, do a little searching on ADS, a little discussion. I made a contribution to this one. I say go ahead and add it because I'll just get the thing, right? I mean the language, the concepts in astronomy change with time. There can be older terms and newer terms, and generally people will use what they grew up with. Generally, sometimes there's a paradigm shift. Everybody will start using the same term for something, so the old term goes away. So in this sense, the UAT is a living thesaurus. On the other hand, you don't want to be updating and deleting every day. Right? Because sort of astronomy terms sort of evolve on decadal time scales. And we'll get to how often the UAT is updated here. So for at least a little while, it's going to be a little messy at the bleeding edge. You're going to have older terms and newer terms. And, yeah, it's okay.
So something I wanted to point out about this is, and just in general is, I do look at Wikipedia, even though it's not always the best source. I try not to look at it first, but it can kind of give additional context and things. In this particular case, the definition for OVV quasar was provided by the person suggesting it, actually. They gave me that link to the Wikipedia article. And so from there, I found these other terms, the highly polarized quasars, flat spectrum radio quasars, all from that link. And so I did some digging on those different terms, the acronyms and the full written out words in ADS to kind of get a sense of what was being used. And I know for this one in particular, it wasn't really clear to me which, if they were all the same thing or not, or if one term was preferred over the other, or what the relationship between these things were. So that's one of the specific reasons that I reached out to Frank to get some feedback.
Yeah, because you have other ones, sort of in that family of highly polarized quasars, HPO, core-dominated quasars, CDQs, and then you have flat spectrum radio quasars. There's sort of a zoology here. And the question is, should we call them all cats, or should we call one a leopard, one a tiger, one a lion, so on?
And how relevant are those terms to astronomers? And like you were just saying before, we want to add concepts so that it's relevant to astronomers who are doing research now. But we also want to be cautious that we aren't just adding everything, adding the kitchen sink and everything else, and then having to remove those concepts later. That gets a little chaotic. So, it's good to try to figure out when we have new things, like kind of what the general concepts are, and then as astronomers learn more and there's more research done into them, then we can expand and add more concepts in that area.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we covered a little bit on currently open, closed. Suppose I want to suggest one. So if I wanted to suggest one, I would go over here to New Issue. I click on New Issue. And here I can suggest a new concept. I can suggest to depreciate a concept and suggest to modify a concept. So let's just pick one. Let's say adding a new concept.
Yeah.
So we could pick one here. I don't think I'm going to fill this out live, but I might do something like Betelgeuse. Everyone's favorite as of late. And then, you have to give the name of your concept, describe the concept, describe how it fits within the existing hierarchy. So you have to do a little homework before you suggest a concept, and then provide 1 or 3 supporting articles that use Betelgeuse. Now I understand Betelgeuse is a specific star, and in general, there's a shying away from individual objects within UAT because then it just explodes into an unmanageable set.
Yeah, we do have some specific objects, so.
Yeah. So you can go ahead and suggest it, right? There's nothing wrong with suggesting it and filling it out. And so I'm curious when somebody suggests a topic, what's sort of a typical timeline between when it's suggested and when a decision is rendered?
Right. Well, if you want to go back to the UAT website, it's astrothesaurus.org. There's a document there talking about kind of our release cycle and the time frames.
Okay, let's take a look at that. So that would be menu. So this would be
under the About section. So
Under the about, ooh,
Yeah.
we have steering committees, publications, posters, curation process, the release cycle. So let's go to the release cycle. So how long does this take? Decades?
Oh, no. The goal is to have a new version of the UAT out every year in December. So it's kind of a calendar year just to kind of keep it simple on the scheduling. And so here's kind of we document, like I get feedback all throughout the year. That's continual. But there are some kind of soft deadlines, I would say. So if you want to scroll down a little bit, so yeah, so kind of when I start evaluating, or I do try to give, a quick response when a suggestion comes in. If one comes in January, I do try to reply quickly to give kind of my initial thoughts on it and maybe have some questions because I would like to have some discussion. But some of the deep evaluation and thought that goes into the next version, I kind of start that around the middle of the year. And specifically those soft deadlines I was talking about. So as you might, expect, there are different types of changes and different types of suggestions. Someone might want to add a leaf concept, so a kind of the lower end of the hierarchy. So it's just a child concept somewhere. It could be really relevant, and it could be very important to add, but we just didn't have it yet. So that kind of change is fairly minor. It doesn't have a lot of impact over the whole structure. By contrast, if someone wants to take, like let's just say solar physics, because I mentioned that earlier, and someone's like, really the sun is a star, so it belongs under stellar astronomy. That's a huge change if we were to do that. That impacts, because the solar physics and stellar astronomy are both top level concepts. So putting one of the top level concepts under a different top level concept is a huge change. And that would impact, it would have strong implications for anyone using the UAT, especially ADS when they are implementing it more fully. They're going to be indexing the content and using a hierarchical structure to inform suggestions that are presented to users and search results. So that kind of change has a huge impact. So if I'm going to make a change like that, and probably not even that major, that was an extreme example. I like to decide if I'm going to have major changes on July 31st, basically, just a little bit after the middle of the year. That kind of gives me time to scope what the big changes are. And so if someone were to come in say, like today, October 2nd, and make another major suggestion, I might be able to incorporate it depending on the severity of the suggestion.
Right.
But I also just like to be able to say that I'm holding that for discussion at the next release for the next year, just holding discussion on that. And so that's the soft deadline for, like, if you have a major change, would be before July 31st if you want me to address it for the next release. Minor changes, so again, kind of concepts being added that are kind of at the leaf end of the UAT, or kind of small restructurings of very narrow scope areas of the UAT. Those are kind of minor changes. Those I like to have scoped out by the end of October, so the end of this month.
Yep.
And then the patch type changes are like typos or maybe changing the preferred concept. So, like, again, I have stellar physics is the preferred concept, the preferred label for that concept. But if someone was like, maybe it should be solar astronomy instead, that's something that I feel like I could implement if there was enough reason to, which I know there isn't, but if there was, it's a small change. It doesn't change the hierarchy, it just simply changes the label, but the concept isn't actually altered by changing the label itself in that case. So that's kind of the schedule. And then mid-December, I don't have exact date, obviously, just because every year is a little different, but mid to late December, I like to get everything finished and completed, and all the changes that I can possibly make are in the system. I write the patch notes to kind of detail what all those changes are that are going to be in the new version, and I push all that information actually to the GitHub repo. So we were in the issues section, but in the repo you can actually see the current version of the UAT and its releases.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions then on things you mentioned. So once you release a new version, right, does that then get automatically picked up by, let's say, the AAS journal? So if a new node or something was introduced, can I use it immediately in my AAS journal article?
Yes, actually, the way that AAS has implemented the UAT, it's an immediate update.
Okay.
They actually read the JSON file that's available on the GitHub repository live every time you are looking for, when you're looking for concepts at the point of submitting your article, it actually does a live query to that file on GitHub. So when that's updated, it's updated live.
And the other thing you mentioned was ADS. So can one search on a concept within ADS?
Yeah, so ADS has kind of this interesting implementation of the UAT right now, and I haven't had a chance to talk with them, so I don't know how stable this will be in the long term. But if you want to go to ADS, then, I mean, yeah, we can show that if that's what you're interested in. You can actually search ADS with keywords and actually put in the numerical identifier for a UAT concept. So if you do a keyword search.
Okay, so keyword.
A keyword, colon, quotation. And then we'll put a number in there. So I think 1496, I think, is solar flares. I think, we'll see.
Solar flare.
Yeah. So there's actually 150 papers that are using that concept right now in ADS.
That's great.
So it's kind of a cool little implementation. In one of the previous videos, we talked about how to kind of showed where the number is or how to get the identifier from the concept name based on searching in the UAT website. Maybe we should have
down below.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I can search on concepts. So if I'm writing a paper, I'm looking for related concepts or what people may have done. This can be another venue for that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a neat implementation for now. So we'll see where they go with this.
Nice. Cool. And that, everyone, is how you can influence the UAT, both adding concepts, deleting concepts, using concepts, both within your journal article and ADS. Katie, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us today and talking about how people can change the evolution, the content of the UAT.
Thanks very much for having me, and I look forward to hearing suggestions and getting feedback from everyone in the astronomy community. And
we have one more in this series. And so on the next one, Katie will be doing a little presentation on use of the UAT within the AAS journals. All right, so we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I can stop sharing, and we're back here live.